Record.
Greetings, everybody, from Grace Ministries at Rafa. We're also known as Trinitarian Grace International. For those of you that want to look us up on our website, it is www.trinitariangraceinternational.com, and you can find information there if you'd like to look into us. If you have access to to the internet and all that good stuff. Oh, it's good to see everybody here. I was just sitting there thinking as Doris was playing the music for us. It's been quite a journey to get here, right here today, to have all of you sitting here and to have connections with all these people from all over the world and for all over the United States as well. If any of you like Doris and Dale that's been around since the beginning, excuse me, they know what I'm talking about. It's been quite a journey, both as a group and as individuals. And I'm just happy that you choose to. I know you guys here at the rehab that you don't have to be here. You come out to this meeting. This is one meeting that's volunteer. I know that you have many meetings that are mandatory, but this one is not. Of course, we do try to bribe you with honey buns, but that's okay. I don't mind doing that. I'm into a little positive bribing. Or we call it positive manipulation. But I'm so pleased. I just like to say before I turn it over to Doug, who's going to bring us the message today, that don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on yourself. Sometimes I know I've been there where you just say, man, I just give up. I just can't get this thing called life right. I keep messing up. I keep doing this. I keep disappointing. Just remember, God's not disappointed. He's not mad at you, and he's got patience that we would never dream of. He's with us through the whole thing. But anyway, I appreciate it. We've had a few more. Porter, hey Porter, and Keith from one of our Florida has popped on with us, and I think it joined on with us since we started. But I'm gonna toss it to Doug. Doug, you got it today. Doug's gonna bring us the message, and we're looking forward to it. Doug.
Okay, thank you very much, Franny. I'll hurry up and get this thing set up so that we can go ahead. I hope that you can all see this, and if you can't, somebody please let me know. I think the message that I'm going to be giving today will fit in quite well with the remarks that Randy just made about not giving up, and about God not giving up on you, and about you not giving up. There is a wrestling match that's recorded in the Old Testament that is, I think, an epic wrestling match. In fact, it is a wrestling match between God and a human being. And I want to go through that today because I believe that this has a lot of bearing on each and every one of us and what happens in our lives. So just follow along. I'm going to start, however, in the New Testament because this little verse, these couple of verses in the book of Luke just have always caught my attention. And this occurred right after the resurrection of Jesus. And there were two disciples who we don't know who they were. Their names are not given. They were walking on the road to Emmaus, and without recognizing Jesus, he shows up and he walks and he talks with them. They don't know who he is. And it says in Luke 24:27, and beginning with Moses, that's the book of Genesis, because Moses wrote the book of Genesis, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. And I've wondered about that. Now, it caused me to take a fresh look at the Old Testament and say to myself, where is Jesus in all of this? And you can see in verse 32, this was right after Jesus disappeared from their sight. They were just in the process of having communion. And they asked to each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? And I'm sure that each and every one of us has a bit of a burning in our hearts to understand what on earth is God trying to tell me. But at the same time, we're kind of afraid of him. Maybe we distance ourselves from him, and maybe we don't even believe that he exists. But nevertheless, there's something inside of us that, like, I kind of want to know. So anyway, since reading those few verses in Luke 24, I've been watching for evidence of Jesus in the Old Testament, and I want to focus on this particular story. I'm going to read this story to you first, and then give you some background of the cast of characters, and then go back through this story in greater detail. So it's about Jacob. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What's your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" And then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." That was an incredible wrestling match. So who is this Jacob guy? Was Jesus somehow in his life? Well, anyway, Jacob was the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham. Abraham, by the way, is a very, very well revered figure, ancestor in the three major monotheistic religions, namely Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. All hold Abraham in high regard. Anyway, Jacob lived about 1,700 years before Jesus was born. So how on earth could Jesus be in the life of Jacob? Well, let's just go through, and I think you'll see it pretty plain. In Genesis 25 and verse 21, Isaac, who would be Jacob's father, prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And I'm sure ladies have had children. You know the feeling when that little thing is kicking and moving inside of you. And men, I know I was able to feel that little kicking and bouncing of my kids when my wife was pregnant. You just put my hand on her tummy, and it was amazing. Sometimes you could even see those little feet or whatever pushing out on the abdomen. It was quite a sight. Anyway, verse 23, the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will serve the stronger, and the other, the older, will serve the younger." Now, he was not saying this is the way it's supposed to be. He's saying this is the way it's going to be. This is how it's going to turn out. And indeed, it did turn out that way. Genesis 25 and verse 24, when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man staying among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So there you have a little bit of family history. And if you have some time to study this, there are some family dynamics there that are very dysfunctional and that create some problems in the family that were there for many, many generations, and in fact still are out there in families today. Now, the inheritance practices of old were, by tradition, the firstborn was supposed to get the major portion of the inheritance. So by that, Esau being firstborn by just, a minute or so, he was supposed to get the major portion of the inheritance. Jacob, being secondborn, wasn't going to get that much. But anyway, Jacob wanted that so bad. It's kind of like he was a grabber from the beginning. He wanted that so bad, he eventually conned his brother into selling his inheritance for the price of a bowl of soup. believe it or not. Apparently Esau just kind of didn't really care that much about it. Later, Jacob, of course, he had to get the official blessing from his father. It wasn't just enough to take it from his brother, but he was in kind of cahoots with his mother. She was involved in this. He further humiliated Esau by conning their father into giving the blessing to Jacob in the official ceremony. Now, have you ever been conned or humiliated by a brother or a sister, or have you ever humiliated one of your brothers and sisters? It doesn't go down well. The person who's being humiliated builds up resentment. The person who does the humiliating winds up, in a sense, estranging and pushing away that family member. It messes up the relationship. Now, the result of this, Genesis 27 or verse 41, the result of this stealing of the birthright, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of my mourning for my brother are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob. Remember, this guy was a hunter. Esau was a hunter, a man of the field. When Rebekah was told what her older son Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said, your brother Esau is consoling himself with the thought of killing you. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides, because she's trying to protect the life of her son. Get out of town, run as fast as you can, get far away so your brother won't find you, won't know where you are, and maybe his anger will cool off, and maybe someday you can come back home. That was the plan. And anyway, he goes to his uncle Laban, is his uncle's name, his place in Haran, falls in love with one of Laban's daughters, the good-looking one, so to speak, but is forced to marry two of the daughters. His father-in-law was also kind of a shyster, if I could put it like that, and fixed it so that Jacob would have to marry both daughters. And how he did that was kind of an underhanded way. You can read about that yourself. By the way, it wouldn't hurt if you just had some time to read from about Genesis 25 all the way to maybe Genesis 50, because there's an awful lot of the life of Jacob and his family that I've been leaving out. That should give you a whole lot more background and appreciation for what's going on here. Anyway, not only does he marry two of the daughters, but because Rachel, the older daughter, or not the older daughter, but his favorite wife, is barren, can't have children, so he winds up taking two maidservants as mistresses, and as a result, ends up with 11 sons and at least one daughter. So man, he's the guy is getting a big family, but he's also prospering in terms of livestock and wealth. He stays there for 20 years, and through hard work and frankly shady shrewdness, he ends up very wealthy. And that then makes his in-laws despise him because they are somewhat jealous, but also they realize that he's kind of being crooked in many ways. Now, fearing for his life, he flees his father-in-law's place and heads back home with his wives, children, and animals. And remember, he had to leave home because of his kind of double dealing and sneaky ways and grabbing. Now he has to leave his in-laws because of the very same thing. 20 years difference. But he also remembers Esau's death threat, and he is very afraid. Remember, Esau is an extremely skilled hunter, and he could take your life so quickly because he is that good of a hunter. Now, I'm skipping out a lot of detail here, but we see in the text in Genesis that Jacob does a lot of planning and distributing his people, and he puts his servants way out in front, and then he puts his wife and his children kind of behind them, and then he puts himself way in the back. So he's hiding behind his servants, he's hiding behind his wives and children to try to save his own neck. It's kind of a well, you get a picture of a guy looking out for number one. You know, I'm the most important one here. I'm looking out for me. And if I lose my servants, okay. If I lose my wife and kids, okay. But at least maybe I'm going to be okay. Maybe I'm going to live. That's kind of his mindset. Not a very nice guy at times. but he's praying. And look at what he prays for. O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me. Now, he does not acknowledge God as his God. He's not sure about this God. He's not really sure. He looks to himself primarily as, I'm going to get this. I'm going to do this. I'm a self-made man. But he does recognize that Abraham thought highly and acknowledged this God as his God, and that his father Isaac also acknowledged God as his God. But he's kind of like, I don't know about this yet. And he's had several contacts with this God over the time period, and so he reminds this God of the promises, ignoring his own how should I say it, his own dishonest ways. He reminds God of what he said. Go back to your country and your relatives, and I'll make you prosper. Now he's looking at health and wealth, which unfortunately we find that rampant in some Christian circles today, that somehow health and wealth is an indication that you're really blessed by God or favored by God, or that you're really righteous. And he says, I'm unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you've shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two groups. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. He pretty much ignores his culpability in all of this, doesn't recognize a lot of stuff that was really his own fault. But he's pointing out to God, look, these are your promises. You promised to prosper me. You promised to have a lot of descendants, and I'm going to hold you to that. Well, after that, Jacob was left alone. So there he is all by himself. He thought he had strategically placed his servants ahead of him as a barrier. And he thought, well, maybe my wife and some of my property is safe across the river. So he's there all by himself. Now you imagine this. Imagine there you are, you're out in the wilderness. You're not in town. You're not in a house. You're not where there's a bunch of streetlights. You're in the dark. You're out there alone in the dark, and all those sounds of animals and all the kind of stuff that's going on. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a man grabs you. You can just imagine the fear and the adrenaline rush that would happen to Jacob. This guy is wrestling for his life. And no matter what move he makes, this man has a counter move. Jacob at that time has no idea who he's wrestling with. He just thinks it's a man, some man that's going to probably rob him or kill him. He doesn't know who this man is. And the text is very plain. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, interesting kind of tongue-in-cheek way of saying it, I think, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Now, how many times have you or I tried to do something and we're facing a horrible handicap? You know, you're really sick and you got to do this thing, or maybe you've broken your leg or your arm or something, and you've got this really important thing to do. Something's holding you back, but you're still trying. And then the man, it's interesting that all this is going on in the dark. And then the man says, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. There's got to be some profit in there somewhere, buddy. I've been wrestling with you all night. You scared the wits completely out of me. And you're not beating me. I'm matching you move for move, and you're matching me move for move. So, you're asking for mercy here. You're asking me to let you go. I ain't going to do it unless you bless me. Still doesn't know who this man is. Verse 27, the man asked him an odd question, instead of saying yes or no. What's your name? Jacob. The heel grabber, the deceiver, the grabber, with everything that's loaded in that name of Jacob. So he's confessing who he is. Jacob, I am living up to my name. Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. Now, this is not exactly what Jacob was expecting, because he would have expected the man to say something like, well, I'll give you this, give you gold, or I'll give you more cattle, or I'll give you more goats or sheep or something, or whatever. That's kind of, I think that's what he was expecting. But instead, and names back in that day were very, I guess a good name was quite precious, but also distinctive. Your name, going to change your name. The man says, going to change your name. Now, who has authority to change your name, for crying out loud? Somebody bigger than you, perhaps. But Israel, because you have struggled with God, not against God, but with God. There is a relationship here, a one-on-one, face-to-face wrestling relationship that you are with him, not apart from him, not separated from him, not over him in any manner, shape, or form, but with him and with men. You know, not against men, not pushing men away, but with men. So there's kind of a prophetic thing in here, and have overcome. Overcome what? This is again prophetic of how Jacob was going to be, what he was going to become. No longer a heel grabber, but someone that is with God and with men. There is a relationship implied here. Then Jacob says, something's dawned on him. I don't know this guy's name. Please tell me your name. Not tell me your name, but please tell me your name. That's a kind of a change of tone here, isn't it? But he replied, why do you ask my name? Why do you ask my name? Apparently Jacob doesn't answer. Then he, this quote unquote man, blessed him there. I don't know what he said to him or what he, you know, how he did it or whatever, but then something clicked in Jacob's mind, and he names the place, Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face. I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. What did he expect? Well, I think he expected what a lot of people expected. You see God face to face, and he doesn't like you, and he's just going to smoke you like an overcooked steak or something. No, he saw something about God. God matched him face to face. Now, this is called a theophany, to give you a little theological background. It's an appearance of God in human form. This is also known as a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus, the same person in the Trinity who would be born 1700 years later to Mary and named Jesus. That's who this person was. And interesting how this Jesus, how this man, quote unquote, how God actually wrestled with Jacob. And we'll see a little bit more about the significance of that in a minute or two. Now, power that's in a name. Imagine growing up with a name that means deceiver, heel grabber, or con man, because that's essentially what Jacob meant. Now imagine his brother Esau. Well, he had a name that meant hairy, or red, or hairy, and it's certainly more of a manly name than heel grabber, con man. But let's face it, it might be in macho circles. Yeah, it was a little hairy over there. I got more hair than you do. That might be some sort of a sense of pride, but really, it's still kind of a humiliating nickname. You mean that's all you can say about the guy is, here's old Harry, or here's old con man. To reduce you to that's kind of humiliating. Anyway, God gave him a new name, Israel, which means triumphant with God, not against God or for God, but with God. A relationship, a face-to-face relationship where God is your father and he loves you and he wants to be alongside of you and with you. Or it also means one who prevails with God, that he and you and God, or Jacob and God are working this out together. Some nicknames are humiliating, and I'm sure that in this audience, some of us have been given nicknames that are rather dishonorable or humiliating. And frankly, some of us have probably been the kind of person who gave other people dishonorable nicknames and humiliated people by what we call them. And I ask you, what's your new name going to be? whatever your nickname might be, if it's a humiliating name, or even if your given name is a humiliating name, or if your reputation is humiliating, God's not going to hang you with that one all your life. He's going to give you, and probably already has given you, a new name. We just may not know what it is, but that's what God is. He does not humiliate us. He honors us. Notice that God, and maybe go back to the title of the slide. This was what always puzzled me about this story. Why let it end in a draw? Why let it end at a draw? I mean, like, for crying out loud, God could have smoked him instantly. Snap of the finger, lightning bolt, earthquake, whatever, pestilence. But God did not overpower and humiliate Jacob, even though he most certainly could have. And does that seem odd? Well, it only seems odd if our view or understanding of God is wrong. If our view of God is wrong and we think that he's some angry, gonna get even with you, gonna stomp on you, if that's our view of God, yeah, that seems odd. But if we realize that God is a loving Father and is interested in bringing us up and transforming us into the persons we are intended to be, no, that doesn't seem odd at all. It's the only way to be. Again, he did not humiliate Jacob, but blessed him in a way that was, in the long term, transformational. And he did, in fact, honor Jacob's prayer. You can reread that in Genesis 32, 9 through 12. He did honor that prayer, not probably in the way that Jacob was expecting it, but he did honor it. Now, let's fast forward to the end of Jacob's life. He's now about 130 years old. He's blind and he's walking with a limp. Walking with a limp and he's blind, 130 years old. He's no longer a man able to rely on his physical strength and his wits to get ahead. Can't rely on that at all. He's living in a foreign land. He had to move from the area that he was in, where he had pasture and livestock. He had to leave that area and go to Egypt as a refugee from drought, kind of like climate change that messed him up. There's 7 years of drought and they were starving. No matter how much livestock he had, no matter how much property he had, the land was starving him out. And by the way, this country of Egypt would, within a generation or two, eventually enslave his descendants. You call that the health, wealth gospel? Look at what's going on here in his life. But when you look at the transformation that took place in Jacob, that is a blessing indeed. So let's look at what an amazing reality he's come to understand as he blesses two of his grandsons. There's going to be a surprise in this to all of us. Jacob, or Israel, now sees what had always been true about himself. Genesis 48, verse 15. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "May the God before whom my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day." This guy is now 130 years old, and it's finally, eventually, it dawned on him that he and God have never been separated. This God has been his shepherd all his life to this day. He just didn't know it. The angel, which is also a reference to God, who has delivered me from all harm, and I might say self-harm, from his desire to grab and humiliate. May he bless these boys. Not may I bless these boys, but may he bless these boys. May he do the same for them. May he give them transformation. May they be called by my name, Israel, not by his old name, Jacob. May they be called by my name and the names of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly upon the earth. Incredible transformation that took place in the heart and the mind of this man, Jacob, or now named Israel. In fact, that's where the nation of Israel got its name, from their ancestor, Jacob. So he's blessing Joseph, and those are actually Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, that he singled out, those two grandsons. Now, yes, Jacob did wrestle with Jesus. And just look at a couple of other things really quick, like here. In Genesis 48 and verse 15, according to Jacob, this God is, as we just read, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day. 700 years later, King David, who was a descendant of Jacob, would write this psalm in Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And many of you know that Psalm 23 by heart. And then in John 10, verse 14, Jesus says this about himself, and the Apostle John records it. I am the good shepherd. I am the one that Jacob wrestled with. I am the one who had been in Jacob's life, all of his life, up all the way in his life, from the beginning of his life to the end of his life. I am the good shepherd. I am the one that King David wrote about in Psalm 23. Now you remember on the Emmaus Road, Jesus told the disciples the writing of Moses and the prophets were about him. Jesus was and is indeed the God of Jacob. And I don't know exactly all the stories that Jesus told those guys on the road to Emmaus, but this one certainly could have been. What's it taken me? Maybe 20 minutes so far. It only took about 20 minutes to tell that story. Powerful story. The truth of our being. Let's move it to us. All of us wrestle with God. All of us do. And mostly without knowing it. Mostly without knowing it. But rest assured, he does not humiliate us. God is not in that kind of a business of humiliating people. We become humble, but not humiliated. Now, Jacob, on the other hand, humiliated his brother, humiliated his father, humiliated his wives, humiliated his in-laws, and many, many others. That's what Jacob did. That's how Jacob operated. But eventually he came to be a man that blessed without humiliating people. But yet God leads us to become aware of his presence, his love, and his blessing, and that results in a confident rest. And you can hear that in the blessing that Jacob or Israel gave to his children at the end of his life. We don't make Jesus the good shepherd, but we come to know that it's true. So let's think about this. What name of honor will Jesus give you? Or maybe what name of honor has he already given you? I wonder, but I know those names are all going to be honorable and absolutely incredibly good and will fit us, each and every one of us, to a T. And that, my friends, is it.
Okay, good. That's okay. Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate that. You're just real good. You're good at teaching, and I love that. Thank you so much for that message. I'll have to ponder all of that. And I do wonder, what name will God give me? What name of honor will he give me? What name of honor will he give you? That is really something to think about. I'm going to toss it over to Doris for a closing hymn. And someone want to do the closing prayer for me? Anybody? Ian will do it. All right. Doris?
Thank you.
Okay. Hey, after the song.
Oh, sorry.
That's all a good start.
Romans 6:16, the Passion Translation. Don't you realize, well, there we go, that grace frees you to choose your own master, but choose carefully, for you surrender yourself to become a servant bound to the one you choose to obey. If you choose to love sin, it will become your master, and it will own you and reward you with death. But if you choose to love and obey God, he will lead you into perfect righteousness.
Here I am, down on my knees again, surrendering all, surrendering